In a press briefing, House Speaker Paul Ryan called for a pause in immigration by Syrian refugees to ensure terrorists are not admitted into the U.S. A new congressional task force this week is developing a plan for Syrian asylum seekers. This briefing is 10 minutes.
Morning. Morning. Come on in. Come on, Lynn. What happened in Paris is pure evil. And I simply want to say that our prayers and our condolences go out to the victims' families and to the French people. It's clear that this was an act of war and that the world needs American leadership. The National Defense Bill that I will sign later today requires the President to come up with a plan for defeating ISIS. Not just containing, but defeating ISIS. A containment plan is not enough. That has failed. In addition, the majority leader and our committee chairs are developing a plan to address the Syrian refugee crisis. Our nation has always been welcoming, but we cannot let terrorists take advantage of our compassion. This is a moment where it's better to be safe than to be sorry. So we think the prudent, the responsible thing is take a pause in this particular aspect of this refugee program in order to verify that terrorists are not trying to infiltrate the refugee population. In the end, the ultimate solution to this crisis is a strategy to defeat ISIS. All of this rises above politics. This is not about politics. This is about national security. And so we will invite all of our colleagues, Republicans and Democrats, to work with us quickly to address the urgent nature of this situation.
I would like to add to the condolences from the House to the innocent victims of Paris. They were attacked because of their way of life, as we watch now around the world of it happening. The Speaker is correct. This is not a time to find containment. It's a time to defeat ISIS. That's why when the Speaker and I spoke this weekend, we put together a task force. It is a task force made up of the chairman on counterterrorism and homeland security. It's made up of armed service, appropriations, intel, homeland, judiciary, and foreign affairs. We've been coming up with short-term and long-term solutions. This is not something that we can solve overnight, but there are issues right before us when it comes to the refugees. We realize what has happened in Paris, and we realize we want our homeland to be secure. The Speaker has challenged us to come up with legislation starting this week to deal with the issue as we go forward. And you'll find a series of bills that not only in the NDAA ask the President to come up with a strategy to defeat ISIS, but a series of bills to protect our homeland as we move forward.
As the people of France are grieving, we stand with them in their grief. They've seen attacks on their soil from terrorists. We've seen terrorist attacks on our soil. So as they grieve, we grieve with the people of France. And it, I think, underscores, even more importantly, how vigilant we have to be in establishing a real plan to go and root out and take on ISIS in a broader way. And so I would like to see the President have a stronger plan and a new plan to take on ISIS and to confront this threat as they are saying that they're going to exploit these refugee programs. We ought to take them seriously in that threat. As they're saying they want to attack America, we ought to take them seriously in that threat. I was in Greece just a few months ago, meeting with some of our military leaders who were on the front lines. And as they confirmed to us that as they're seeing thousands of refugees coming in, being distributed throughout Europe, the plans to vet just don't exist. As you're seeing the President say he wants to bring 10,000 more refugees into America, his own leaders are saying that there is no ability right now to vet that there are not terrorists infiltrating these refugee plans. So I think American people are concerned as well as we are about making sure that these refugee programs are not exploited by terrorist organizations. And the President ought to join with us in making sure that that does not happen. And until it's not, until it's certified that it's not happening, discontinue this plan.
Last Friday, the world witnessed another unspeakable act against civilization and against the people of Paris. And our thoughts and prayers continue to be with the victims and their families. On behalf of the American people and our allies, we must finally rise to the challenge. Working alongside our international partners, we must provide the leadership and the commitment necessary to destroy ISIS and halt Bashar al-Assad's mass atrocities. These are the causes of the world's most serious terrorist threat and the most significant refugee crisis since World War II. It is time for a real commitment and the courage and the resolve from our president. It is time for leadership. We must be articulating that broader strategy to the nation and to our allies, and then we must actually follow through on it.
My thoughts and prayers are also with the people of Paris and the families worldwide affected by this horrific tragedy. The United States must continue to stand shoulder to shoulder with France and our allies in the face of this radical Islamic terrorism. There is no more important duty than to protect American lives at home and abroad. In these difficult times, nations have always looked to America for leadership. America must lead. That is why Congress passed the National Defense Authorization Act with overwhelming bipartisan support. This defense bill will give our military the tools they need to combat this spread of terrorism. We must act swiftly and effectively to help ensure the continued safety of Americans everywhere. It's up to us in America to show a path forward as we fight for a safer world for our kids to grow up in.
Good morning. I'm Congresswoman Martha McSally from Arizona's 2nd Congressional District. I serve on the Armed Services and the Homeland Security Committee. Prior to being in Congress, I was in the military for 26 years. As our colleagues in leadership said, our thoughts and prayers are with the people of Paris and France for these horrific attacks that happened last week. But it could have happened here. I had the privilege to be appointed to a task force on combating the flow of foreign fighters and terrorist travel. For 6 months, this bipartisan task force looked at this very threat. What we know of is 30,000 individuals that have traveled from over 100 countries to Iraq and Syria. We know over 4,000 are from Western and visa waiver countries, 250 from America. Those are the ones that we know of. We realize there are so many that we don't know of. Law enforcement has investigations in every single state right now. And we found 32 findings in our report that we released in September after 6 months. This administration needs to step up. We do not have a strategy. We do not have a focus. There are over 200,000 social media tweets and posts per day by ISIS in a very sophisticated social media campaign. They are acting at the speed of broadband while we are acting at the speed of bureaucracy. We need a strategy. That includes unleashing American air power in a way that can actually crush and defeat them in Iraq and Syria. A broader strategy diplomatically and militarily for the dozens of countries that we're seeing ISIS presence in. Stopping the flow of foreign fighters, and then countering the radical extremism that we're seeing happening in our own neighborhoods. We have less than 24 people focused on countering this extremism in America. We have 10,000 IRS agents making sure that you don't take an improper charity deduction, and less than 24 people focusing on countering violent extremism at home. It's time for this administration to step up its game, take this seriously. It is a generational conflict, and we must lead now more than ever. Thank you.
Questions?
Thank you. You said this is an act of war. We've only declared war 5 times, the last time in 1942. Are you talking about an actual declaration?
I think ISIS just showed that they're committing an act of war against the West. What else do you call what they did in Paris?
But what should be the congressional response? I mean, I guess what you're talking about.
Well, if you're talking about AUMF, that's a different question. We have the authority right now under the existing AUMF, and we'll revisit all of these issues later. Look, the way we look at this issue is, number one, right in front of us is the fact that we have a refugee situation that we think requires a pause and a more comprehensive assessment on how to better guarantee that members of ISIS are not infiltrating themselves among the refugee population. But please know, this isn't just about refugees. This is what Congresswoman McSally said. This is about having a comprehensive strategy to deal with ISIS by defeating ISIS. That's what we do not have. The bill we are sending to the White House this week, the Defense Authorization Bill, requires that the President have a comprehensive plan to defeat and eliminate ISIS. Containing ISIS is not enough. Defeating ISIS is what is necessary, and we do not have that comprehensive plan in place.
Can you be clear on what exactly you're calling for in the pause to the refugee program?
So,
the entire refugee program,
we are talking about, look, let me say this. The American refugee laws are important laws. It's important that we have a refugee system in place. We respect that. But we think it's simply prudent that for this particular program, in this particular situation, that we be better guarded against any possible infiltration of ISIS coming through this program. That is why we think it's necessary to have a pause and to have a more comprehensive strategy dealing with guaranteeing that we do not allow ISIS members coming here. So just to finish answering your question, this is what the Majority Leader's working group is coming up with. We've assembled a task force starting Saturday to consider legislation as quickly as possible, and we'll be back in touch with that as we make our conclusions this week.
One of the ways in which ISIS is successful is that they're able to hold ground. We've had limited success with the manpower on the ground in overtaking ISIS strongholds. Do you think part of this comprehensive strategy should entertain the possibility of U.S. combat troops on the ground?
I do not think any option should be taken off the table. I think all options should be placed upon the table, and I think the Commander-in-Chief, this is his duty and responsibility, should come up with a plan that actually accomplishes the goal of defeating ISIS.
Well, and I just wanted to furthermore this pause. So you wanted to pause the program until you could verify the...
Our task force is considering legislation while we speak. We're meeting every day, and we will bring legislation forward, and we'll give you the answer to those questions when we have made our conclusions. How about it? Look, we don't want to wait that long. We want to work and act on this faster than that. We will be having an intelligence briefing for our members this evening. The Intelligence Committee will be briefing all of the members of the House at 5:30 this evening, so that members have the kinds of facts that we need as the situation unfolds. Thank you very much, everybody. Appreciate it.
I'm the leading state sponsor of terrorism.